What's up guys? So in this video we're going to build this recipe landing page using React, and this project is perfect for beginners who understands the concept or the fundamentals of React but also want to apply those concepts in a real world scenario or in a real world project. So let's go through what the project is about. So you can see that we have a nice hero section right here, and if I scroll down you see that we have a black background that's coming in. If I scroll back up, that background is going away, and we also have a grid for us to be able to search for different recipes. So I can search for the chicken one. You can see we have chicken, and if that search result is not there, you get this image right here saying no recipes found. And I can go back and I can like a recipe. So if I refresh this, you'll see that the data is still persisted on local storage. And if I click on liked recipes, I can see all the recipes that I liked. And another cool thing is that if I click on the recipe, I get more information about that specific recipe and the ingredients as well. So I can go back, and we also have a testimonial section, and we also have a newsletter section that's just giving us a message when we subscribe, but the data is not actually going anywhere. And again, the website is responsive for mobile, so you can see that everything is stacked top of each other. And if I click on this, I see my nav items right here. All right guys, so this is what we'll be building, and we'll be covering some fundamentals of React, like how to structure your files and folders, how to create components, how to pass props. We'll talk about state, event handling, routing, and local storage, and some other cool things. With that being said, let's dive right into the video. Alright, so I have VS Code open. You can use whatever code editor you choose to, and I just have an empty folder called recipe app. You can call yours whatever you want, and I didn't mention this in the intro of this video, but the link to the project will be in the description. So before we start writing code, I just want to clarify that this is not an HTML, CSS, or a Tailwind course, because we're going to be using Tailwind for styling, which means that I won't spend most of the time explaining all the styles. I'll try as much as possible to explain, but I won't spend all the time explaining the styles. So with that being said, we'll be using a build tool called Vid to create our React app. So we can do that by saying npm create vid at latest. Then I'll specify the folder. So since I'm inside this folder, we'll just use this period sign. Then we'll say yes. And we'll select React. And for this, we'll just go with JavaScript. Then we can run npm I to install all the dependencies. Alright, so all the packages has been installed. So we can clear these out, and we'll need to bring in Tailwind. So I'll go back right here and search for Tailwind. Then we'll go to frameworks guides. Then we'll look for vid. So we've already done this part. So what we need to do is to copy this command right here, go back and paste it here. So that has been installed. Next, we'll go back and copy this other one. And this should give us the Tailwind config file. Yes, yeah, this file right here. Then we'll need to copy this and go to our Tailwind file and just place it with this, save. So we can head back and copy these styles, and we'll look for our index.css. So this right here, we'll get rid of all these boilerplate code and paste. I guess I didn't copy it, so cut it again, paste it right here and save. Then while we are there, let's just clear out some files that we won't need. So we don't need the app.css, and this app.jss will get rid of all the boilerplate code, and I'll say RFCE. So this is ES6, ES7 code snippets. So you can look for that on the extensions. So I'll save this and let's test it out to see if Tailwind is working before we move on. So say npm run dev. Okay, so we'll copy this port right here and we'll paste it here. Okay, so I guess the Tailwind is working. So let's confirm by saying class name should be background of, let's say, red 500. Okay, our Tailwind stars is working. And in case if you're wondering how I'm getting this autocomplete, I'm using an extension called Tailwind IntelliSense, right? Tailwind IntelliSense. Yeah, this one. It makes Tailwind more intelligent and gives you different suggestion. So we can clear this out. So we'll go back to the tailwind.config and I'll copy some codes and paste it here and just go over those code. So basically I just set some stars that we'll need in a project. So I reset the container to have a pattern of run name and to center into true, added some colors, also added some font size and font weight and font family as well, and also make some adjustment to the screens. Like I said earlier on, all this will be in the description. So we can go back now, and the next thing to do is to install React Router DOM. So let me stop my server and say npm I React Router DOM. So in case if you don't know what React Router DOM is, it's basically a package that allows to create different routes on our React project. So I can clear this out, and guess we need to set up the font. So go back to our website and go to fonts.google. I'll search for Poppins, this one. Click on get fonts and get embedded code, and we'll just stick with this one right here. So I'll go back and go to my index.html file and I will paste it right here, save. And right now, okay, so we've not started our server yet. So while we're at the, let me just call this Zest. I think that was the name of the website. And let's also give this a background of the gray 100. Let's save. So the next thing we want to do is to bring in the icons. So for icons, we'll be using Lucid icons. So go to the guide, go to guide, and go to installations, go to React and select npm and click on this. Open our terminal and paste this right here. All right, that has been installed. So we have to do two more things before we get fully into creating the header component. So the first thing to do is to bring in all the data we'll need. So I'll create a data.js file. So we're working with local data or a mock data that I stored on my notes. Just copy everything here and I'll paste it right here. So ignore all these. This is just letting me know that it's an unknown word, and I think I forgot the name of this extension, but if I remember I will leave it in the description of this video. But if you don't have the extension installed, you won't see this blue squiggly line. So we also need to bring in these assets, which I will do and get back to you shortly. All right, so we have all the assets and now we want to create the header component. So since the header component is what we are going to reuse on different parts of our website, what I normally do, or what I always do, is that I create a folder called components and I store those reusable components in the component folder. So I'll create one called header.jsx and I'll bring in this code snippet right here. And inside this header, so what we'll do is I'll get rid of this div and I'll call it header. So in order for this project to not be super long, what I'm going to do is that I will be styling the different tags as I'm adding them. And do let me know in the comments which approach you prefer. You prefer me writing the tailwind CSS before, or you want the structure of the HTML before writing the CSS. Just let me know in the comments as well. So I guess we've not started the server, so say npm run dev again. Okay, so we can go back to this. All right, so we'll start from mobile. Let's reduce this down a bit. Then I'll give this a class name and say should be fixed because we want it to be at the top at all times. So you can see that this one right here is fixed. So we'll give it a top, set it to 0, give it a height, z index, width of 4, set the transition to all. Duration should be 300 milliseconds and set this to ease in out. Then inside this header we'll have another div with a class of container and also set it to flex items the center, justify will be between, and we'll add a padding top and bottom of 4. And inside this we'll have the so I'm gonna wear the logo, but in our case will just be a text called zest. Then I'll style this in a bit. Then we'll also have the nav. So for now I will just create the nav component. I'll just put it right here. I've not created it. I'll just leave it as it is. Then we'll also have a button that is going to have the menu icon. So before we continue styling the header component, let me just create the nav component right here. So say nav.jsx and do the same thing and we can now import this one here, so we don't have errors. All right, cool. So for this logo, give it a class and set it to text of 500 and set the font to 500 for now. We also add some styles when we start scrolling as well. Then for the button, just give this z-index of 50. Text will be white. At medium screens and up, it will be hidden. So in order to make sure this is working, because right now we're just in this app, we need to go to the app components and don't need a div. Just use this code fragment right here, and we'll bring in the header component. And I think we have to manually refresh for this to work. All right, cool. So this is there. I don't know if you can see it. Let me just change it to black. I'll change it to white later on so that you see it right here. All right, cool. But like I said, we want this navigation to stay at the top at all times. So this is where we need to bring in the React router. So the way React router works is that first of all, we're going to import some things from React router DOM. And the first thing will be the browser router. Also need the routes, and we need the individual route. So like I said, I didn't want this video to be complicated, so this is just a basic setup, but there is different ways to approach this right here. So I'll cut this out for now, and I will wrap our entire project inside this browser router, which is basically a router that is used in web browser, so that the web page, we know that okay, this wraps different routes. So inside this browser router, I can now bring in the header right here, and we can also specify the route. So what the route does is that we just hover on it so that you see what it does. So it renders a branch of routes that matches the current location, as you can see. So it renders different routes which we are going to create. So the first one will be just route. Then this route we eventually have a path. So this slash right here means it's the home page, or you can just still use index. It works fine, but I will use this part right here. Then the element, which is basically where you want to route from or route to. So in our case, this will just be the home that we've not created yet as well, and this should be inside curly brackets. So say this should be home, and the home is a page on its own, which means we are going to go to our source folder and create a pages folder to store the home component. So everything about React, they are components, but it's good to structure them in a way that will be easier for you to navigate when your project gets bigger. Say ROFCE. Okay, clear this out, and I will import this one as well. Save. See if I go back, you can see that now we have this home right here at all times. And if we go to another page, you know what, let's just test it out. So let me create another route called about. For example, this should be /about, and I'll call this about.gsx and leave it as it is. So if we go to the home component and I put a link right here that say /about and say go to about, make sure we save the app file. About is not defined, so we need to bring in about, save. So now when we click on this about, you see that the header will still remain as it is, and I guess that didn't work because of what is there. So let's go to about. So you know what we do, I don't know why this is not working right now. So for us to still show that it's working, I can just go to /about, and you can see that we'll see the about, but at the same time this header still remains at the top at all times. Since it's not inside this route, it's just going to stay above it at all times. All right, so let's get rid of this about. We don't need it anymore. So we can head back to the header. So let's refresh this, get rid of that error. Okay, so what we want to do now is to create a state to track the menu icon. So basically we want to switch it between the menu and the close menu. So in order for us to, so the way to do it in React is to create a state, and we'll call this is open and set is open, and this would be use state, and we'll set it to false to start with. And since we have this right here, I will create a function called toggle menu, and this will be an arrow function, and we'll basically grab the function to update this state right here, and we'll just set it to the opposite of the state itself. So basically when we toggle, we are just changing the state from false to true or from true to false. So we can go right under this and say if it's opened, we want to show the X icon, else we want to show this right here. So you can save, and again we also make sure that we want to toggle it on click. So call the toggle menu on click, and if we test it out now, you can see that the states are changing. So I'll also increase the size, say size 32, size 32 as well. I think it's bigger, yeah. All right, so the next thing we want to do is to add the scroll event to show whenever we scroll past a certain number. So you can see for this one right here, I think when we scroll above 100, this kicks in, and if it's below it, it goes off. So we want to do that, and for us to be able to do that, we'll first of all create a state so that when we scroll past that, we're going to store or set that state to true in order for us to show this. And when it's below that certain number, we will set it to false for the black background to go away. Oops, let me bring this back. All right, so the same thing we did for the menu, we just call this is scrolled and set is scrolled. I'll leave it at false. And in order to achieve this, we need to use a use effect, because this happens once the page loads. And this dependency array means that the use effect will only run once the page loads. So I'm guessing you already understand the fundamentals of use effect. So inside this use effect, we'll create a function called handle scroll. This will be an arrow function as well. I want to do now is to check if the window dot property called scroll y, if it's greater than 100. So let me just console.log something. See, yeah, it's, you just say above 100. Then we can say else log out a value called below 100. And now what we need to do is to add the event listener to this function we've created. We need to add the event listener to it. So in order for us to do that, we can just say windows dot add event listener. So basically like the way it normally done in JavaScript, and we'll pass in the event listener. In our case, we want to listen for a scroll event, and we'll pass in the handle scroll. And this is not it. We also need to return and get rid of the this event listener to avoid memory leaks. So as we scroll and the event listener kicks in, which is handle scroll, we also want to remove it when it's still below the threshold right here. So say windows or remove event listener, and still passing the scroll and the handle scroll function. So we can't test it right here because we don't have a lot of data. So what we'll do is I'll go to my home and I will just bring in some lorem ipsum stuff. So say lorem ipsum like 500. As this will work. Did I bring in the home? So we need to go back to the app. Why is that not showing up? Okay, we're still in the about, so we need to go back to the home itself. And we need to refresh this. Yeah. So you can see that it's below 100. As we're scrolling above 100, then we'll scroll back to the top. See that it's showing below 100. So now we can set this different state. So we can say if it's above 100, we'll set the scroll to be true. Then if it's below 100, we just set it to false. So now we can keep track and update the function right here when the state change. Then we'll grab this state and let's just pass it into the header because we need it for the header, and we'll get rid of these quotes right here and use backticks. And before this, I will just bring in the $sign and say if it's scrolled, we want to show the black background. I will just add the background shadow of small. I will say else don't do anything. So you can see that when we scroll now, the black background is coming in. And while we are there, let's just change some things. So for this, we'll change it to white. Then for this logo, we'll do the same thing here. So this will be backticks, curly bracket first, then backticks, and we'll see if it's scrolled, we want the color to be the primary 400, else we'll just default to white. Okay, so don't worry about this white because we will be adding this image background later, so it doesn't really matter for now, but this is working fine. So let's create this nav component. So I can go back to my home and just do Ctrl Z, just put this back to home for now. This is just home. Okay, I can even just get rid of it to not cause confusion. I don't think that will cause any errors. Nope. Okay, so for the nav, what we'll do is I will quickly create all the different navigations, store them inside an array of objects, and the first one will be the name, home, the href will be won't go anywhere, then copy this 3 more times, 1 2 3. So in order to do this, just hold shift alt and the down arrow key. So this will be recipes, this will be category, this will be about us, then we just say about category recipes. All right, cool. So when we open this navigation, I think I'll have to change this back to black. So let me change it back to black, just hope I don't forget to change it to white later on. Okay, so when we click on this, we want to show like a drawer of all the menu. So we'll need to go back to the header and we'll pass in the is opened right here. So pass in the state. So we'll come right here and bring in that state and call it is open. All right, so for this we'll have two different navigations, one for the mobile and one for the desktop. So the first one will be for the mobile, and put this inside a nav tag, and let's just give this a class, and we're going to use the backticks because we also want to check if the menu is open. So if it's open, we want to show the nav items. So say if it's open, then we'll set the translate x to 0, else we'll set the translate x to negative, translate x. This will use an arbitrary number, so say 190.25 rem. Cool. Then we can just add some other styling and say this should be fixed, left should be 0, top should be 0, should be flex, the height should be full, the width should be full as well, items should be center, justify, start, set a transition, all, duration, set it to like 500, and on large screens and up, we'll hide it. Okay, so inside the nav, we'll have a UL that's going to have a class of height, set it to full. The width will be 70%. Border right, I will set the border right color to the primary 400. Set the background to be black. Add the padding length of 4. Padding top, we'll set it to 9 rem. And inside this unordered list, we'll basically map over all everything in our navigation. So say dot map, and we'll pass in the item, and each of them will have an li, which is going to have a key, and let's just set it to the item itself to make it simple. And right here we'll add a class. Let's just style it as well and say this should be text of 200. Add a margin bottom of 4. Set it to add the text of white. And inside this, let me just save this now, and inside this we'll bring in a nav link from the React Router DOM. So what this nav link does is that it's like a link, but we have an error here. I'll fix that in a bit. So it's like a link, but it has an active class, or it comes with an active class by default, which is what we want in this case. So I think we're going to use an index right here so that we don't have any errors. So this will be index. All right, so the class name of this nav link is going to be open in parentheses and open another curly bracket, and we'll have access to some state. So we'll check for is active, then put an arrow right here and see if it's active. Then we want to set the font width to 500, text primary should be 400. Else we want to do something else, so we'll set the font to 500, transition colors, then we'll set the duration to 300, and we'll add an overstate and set the text to primary 400. This should be primary, not pretty. Primary 400. Save this. And I guess we also have access to other states as well. So let me see. Yeah. So I have access to is pending and is transitioning. I've not really gone through what this is about, but it comes when you use this nav link component right here. So we can just pass in the item.name, and right here we need to specify where we want it to go. So we say to, and we just say item.href. Okay, I get that's it. So we can refresh this, and if we click on this, hopefully we should have it right here. Cool. And on desktop screens and up, everything is gone. So we want to just show it right here as well. So for that, let's just close this out, and under here we'll say desktop, and it's basically similar to what we've done here, but let me just still write some of them by hand. So bring in the nav, and the class name will be hidden by default. And on medium devices and up, this will be block. Then inside this, we'll have same URL with a class, flex, items, center, add a space x of 8. Then inside it, we'll just map over each one. So I will just copy everything here and paste it right here and save, and hopefully, yeah, this is what we need. So this is working fine. All right, so the next thing to create is the hero section. So as the name implies, it's a section. So what I normally do again is I create another folder called sections, and we just create that one right here and say hero.jsx. And again, all this I'm doing will really make your life easier when you start building really big projects. So I've been a victim of not structuring my files in the right order, so it causes a lot of chaos when trying to navigate between them. So doing it like this will surely make your life much easier. So for this hero section, we'll change this div to section. Let's just get rid of this one right here. And inside this section, we'll create a div. I'll give this a class of hero. So we're going to create this class in our CSS to bring in the background image. And let's just give this a z-index of 20, so I should be at the top at all times. Then for this, we'll have a class called absolute. Let's be absolute, okay. And this will be self-closing, so don't know why it affects the main one every time. Okay, so this is more like an overlay, that's why it's self-closing. Then we'll set the left to 0, top 0, add a z-index of -10, height will be 4, weight will be 4, background will be black. We'll add an opacity and set it to 70. And underneath it, we'll bring in the container. I'll also set it to flex. The height will be 100 VH, while the flex, I'll set it to column. Items will be center as well. Justify center, text center, and inside this div we'll have another div. This one will basically hold all this right here. So we'll give this a max width, and I will set it to, let's just set it to 800. I'll set the text to white, and the H1 says what? So we'll just copy it right here. So you can see that this recipe has its own color, so we'll just cut it out and put it inside span tag, and I'll paste it here, and I will set the color to be the primary 400, while the H1 itself, set the text to 600, which is the font size. The font weight will be 900, At medium screens and up, we'll increase the font size to like 1000, which is 4.5 rem. Then we'll add the line height of like 1.3. Then on medium devices and up, we also want to add a margin bottom of 4. On medium devices and up, we want to set the leading to 1. Cool. Then underneath this, we'll need to add a p tag to hold this right here. Paste it right here. And for the styling, just set the text to 400 on medium devices and up, and a margin bottom of 4. Then we also need the button, as you saw. Call it view recipes, and we'll add the class name and set the font to 500. Rounded will be large, which is for the border radius. Set the background to primary 400. Add a padding left and right. Set it to 4, and py set it to 2, and set the text to white. Alright, cool. So nothing is showing right here, which is intended. So in order for us to see it, we need to go to our home right here, and this is where we need to pass in the different sections. So the first section is for the hero. You can say hero section, and set this to the hero. And now we can see the hero section. Only that if we go to the app, I'm sure we commented it out, so we just need to comment this out so you can see it looking nice. So we just need to bring in the background image. So for that, we just head back, go to our index to css, and we called it, this class name was 0, so we just set the position to be relative, the background URL, so say background, the URL, this will be the assets, then hero. Okay, set the background position to left, background repeat should be no repeat, and background size set it to cover. Also add the mean height, and let's just say so 100 VH as we did for the main section. Set the display of flex, line items center, justify content center as well. Cool. So now you can see that we are having this cool looking hero section. Just that we need to change this logo. So go back to the header, and this should be white. This should be white as well. Okay, so this is looking really nice. So you can see the pattern now, that when we have a new section, we just need to create it in the sections folder and just pass it into the home section. All right, so the next thing we want to do is to create the recipe section. So inside the section folder, we'll call it the recipes.gsx. I think I just boilerplate code, and let me just put it right here and say recipes section. It should be recipes. So if we check back now, see that we'll have the recipes. So since the styling is just covering both the mobile and desktop view, I guess I'll just leave it like this, like so that will be more easier. So for the recipes, what we'll first do is if we look at the one right here, keep doing this, I don't know why. If you look at this initial one, we have this search bar right here and this liked recipes. So you can come right here, and this is a section, so it should be in a section. And let's add a class. I set this to mx auto, add a max width of 6SL, then px will be 4, py would be 8. Then we also have another div, so this would be, so on media screens and up, we have the display of flex, same thing, justify between, set this width to be full, and items set it to center. Then inside this div, we'll create another div to hold the inputs, and we'll give this class name and set it to relative, add the margin bottom of 4, width of half, I say 1/2, MD, set the margin bottom to 0. Inside this now we can bring in the input tag and set the placeholder to, let's say, search recipes ... and for the class name, set it to width of full, rounded, large, add the border, and border should be gray 100, and add padding around of p4. The padding left will be 12. When we focus on it, we'll set the outline to none. Then the focus state will be this like a shadow. Then we just set it to ring of 1. Then we'll also need to set the focus again and set the ring itself to primary 400. So if we check back now, you can see we have this search right here. We only need to bring in this search icon. So underneath this, we'll just bring in the search and we'll set the size to 20, and the class will be absolute, so it can be relative to its parent. Left will be 4, top will be 1/2, which is 50. Then add the negative to the translate y, translate y 1/2, then transform, and the text gray 400. So if we check back, you can see we have it right here. Then we need to bring in the liked button, so make sure we are close this and outside this. Then we'll say put this as a div and just say button, and let's just default this to like all recipes for now. This button is going to, I guess the class for the buttons are similar, so I can go to the hero and just copy this. All right, cool. So we can head back right now, and since these are bulk details, let's just first of all show everything. So underneath this div, we can bring in the what did we call it again? I think I called it recipes. So you can see recipes, the map over is recipe, and inside this we'll put this recipe inside its own components. You can actually put it right here, but inside the div on its own. But I don't want to bloat this file with too much code. And it's a pattern of when you have you want to display different cards. So I call these cards. It's good to put them inside its own component. So we'll put this inside the recipe component. So recipe. So let's create this component right here. Say recipe.jsx or fce. So once again, we're putting inside this component because we might reuse it on another section or another page. So we can import it, and I will just pass the key so that React don't get mad at us. We use the ID, then I will just pass the recipe to the recipe component. And if you scroll, you can see that we have 6 recipes. So let's just display those 6 recipes first. So we can come right here and structure this and bring in the recipe, and inside this we can just give this a style, call this relative, add an MB4, and it will be large, set the background to white, and add a little shadow. So shadow should be MD. I'll add the button for us to like. So we can set this to the heart right here, which you have a size of 20. And for the class, for now, let's just give this text of center. For the button itself, we'll set the button to absolute, and the left will be 4, top for z index set to 20, flex set the size to 32 pixel. We set the cursor to pointer, items, center, justify will be center as well. Add border radius and set it to full to have the complete circle, and set the background to the primary 400, and lastly we set the text to white. So if we check back right now, you can see we only have the heart icon. So under this, we can create a link from React Router DOM, and since this is dynamic, this will go to the recipe. So we say slash recipe, then $, and say recipe.id. And inside this link, we bring in the image, and the source will be the recipe.image, then the auth will be the recipe.title. Okay, and the class will be height of 48, width will be 4. We'll add the border radius to just the top, and we set it to large, then add the object to, we'll set the object to cover. So let's see what we have. Okay, Okay, nice. Then what we need to do as well is to add the different text. So we can go under the image and put this inside the class called P4, and for the H2, which is the main text, set the font to 400, add the font 600, set this to recipe.title. Then underneath it, we'll have another div, and we'll set the class to flex. The margin top should be 2, items should be sender. The text size, let's just set it to small, and text color will be gray. Let's try 600. I think that will be much lighter. Then we just need to pass in the create a span tag and pass in the recipe time and the difficulty. So let's check. Okay, and underneath this we'll just pass in the description. So say recipe description, then we'll add a class, set the text to 200, add a margin top of 2. All right, cool. But this is not aligned, or is not in a grid format like so. So in order for us to do it, we need to put this entire stuff inside its own div. So we can just do that right now. And let's say margin top should be 8, and median devices and up, set this to grid, set this to grid calls, and let's set this to 2 columns for medium screens. Then add a gap of 4. Then on large screens and up, we'll set the grid to 3 columns. So if we check now, you can see that everything is coming nice, but we can't search for anything, and we can't see our liked recipes. I guess I need to change this to liked recipes. I think that makes more sense. So here's that text. Okay, this should be liked recipes. All right, so the way I want you to think about stuff like this is to break it down to its simplest form. So the first thing we want to do is for us to keep track of everything we are typing right here, first of all. So in order for us to do that, I'm sure you guessed right, it's going to be inside the state, and we'll call this search term, and search term. Then we'll set the use state to an empty string by default. So now we'll go to the input tag, and we'll set the value to be the search term, which is currently an empty string. So if I put in something now, the current value will be this, which means I can't necessarily modify it or change it. So in order for me to change it, let me just get rid of this, and I'll bring in an event listener called on change, and I'll pass in an event, and we basically want to update this function. Let's say set search term, and target the value that's right here. So you can see that even if we have something by default, I can now change it to what I want. So we now have we can now keep track of what we are typing. So now we want to now filter what we are typing with the recipes. So we'll create a function called filtered recipes, and we'll filter over the recipe. Say for each recipe, we'll grab the recipe, the title, and let's just make sure that everything is in lowercase for us not to get any issues. And we want to check if it includes what is inside the search term. So if it includes what we typed right here, and we also want to make sure that it's also in a lowercase as well. So that being said, we can now grab these filtered recipes and you can just put the filtered recipes right here. So now when we search for something like classic, you can see that all those other search results that doesn't match we get filtered out, and we'll see what we look for right here. So I guess we've solved that side of things. So what we need to solve now is that when we click on something else that's not there, we get a blank stuff. So we want to let the user knows that okay, what you're searching for is not there. So in order for us to do that, it's fairly simple. So we'll check if the filtered recipes, the length is equals to 0. So this can be done opposite ways. We'll just check if it's 0, then we want to show something. In our case, we want to show an image I've not brought in yet. Else, we also want to just this should still be inside code fragments. So we need to bring in this not found image. So I can just call it import not found from assets. What did I call it? Okay, not found png. Say not found. Just pass it here, not found. So let's try one more time. If we search for this, we get this image right here. So we need to center it and style it properly. So underneath, we still have to, let me just add a text that says no recipes found. And for this, we'll just give this a class of mx auto size should be 400 pixels. And for the p tag, we set the text to 500, the font should be 600, and we'll set the text to center as well. Okay, that didn't work, so let me try and refresh this again. Let's check for this. Okay, let's say the class should be text center. Why is that not working? Okay, so I guess we don't even need this. So the issue is coming from here. So what we need to do is that this will be a div, and I will cut the class name. I will just need to apply it to just this part. So Let me paste it right here. And yeah, it's working fine now. So we can clear this out and we can search for what we want. So if we need curry, we can search for curry right here. So the next thing to do is to add the ability to like each of the recipe. So for us to do that, we need to create a state for that as well, and we'll call that state liked recipes and set liked recipes, and this will be inside an empty array. So again, we want to keep track of each individual recipe that we liked, and in order for us to do that, we need to use the id to keep track of them, because the id of each of them are quite different. So we can create a function called handle, like it should be past tense, toggle. Then we'll pass in the recipe id, and inside this we'll grab the updated function, set like recipes, and we'll basically grab the previously liked recipe. And what we want to do is that we create a temporary variable that we can update later on. So call this one updated liked. I think this is a better name, or leave it like so. Then we can say if the previous liked variable includes the recipe id, then we'll set the updated liked to be the previously liked and filter the id that is not equals to the recipe id. So basically what we're doing is that if we've liked a specific recipe, this right here will allow us to like unlike that recipe. That's what this does. Else we just want to update it, so we just set the updated liked and create an array and spread over the previous liked recipe and passing the recipe id. So like I said, all these with state is immutable, which means that it cannot be changed. That's why we are spreading over these liked recipes and just adding a new one right here based on the id. And lastly, we just need to return the updated like recipe. So we can now pass in this handle like toggle to our recipe. So we can say let's just call this on toggle handle like toggle. Then we can come to the recipe and the structure that here, say on toggle, and for the button we just say on click. Then we'll call this anonymous function and say on toggle. Then we just pass in the recipe.id. So right now we won't necessarily know, because if I click on this, it's actually working. So we want to now update it based on the liked recipe. So we can still pass in another props right here and say if it's liked, and basically we just say liked recipes dot includes the recipe.id. So if we click on this and what we click on is inside the liked recipes, we can come to the recipe and set the props and say, what do we call this again? is liked. And right now we can now go to the heart right here and get rid of this. It should be backticks. We can now say okay, if it's liked, then we want to add a fill and set it to the current color, else we just set it to an empty one. So you can see that this is coming out. If we toggle again, remember this function right now is to filter it out and get the one that does not match it right here. So hopefully that makes sense. You can scroll back and rewatch it again if you found it a bit confusing. All right, cool. So the next thing we want to do is to allow us to persist the data. So if I like this again and I refresh the page, you can see that it gets brought back to its initial state. So in order for us to do that, we can go back to the handle liked function and just before this return function right here, we can add the local storage and set the item to liked recipes. So this is the key right here. So local storage work with key and value pairs. So the key is a string right here, which we've called like recipes. You can call it whatever you want. Then the value will be inside a JSON and we'll stringify it. And we'll just pass in the what? The updated light. So this right here is to set it, which means that I can now come right here and open my dev tools, expand this a bit, come to application. Let's try that one more time. And I'll click on my local storage right here. And if I like this recipe, you can see that we're keeping track of that like recipe. So if we refresh right now, you can see that okay, it's still there, but we want to still update it on our UI. And basically it's a side effect. So when the page refreshes at least once, we want to persist the data. So I can close this one and let's just do this above this and say use, not use fetcher. So we say use effect. And like I said, we want this to only run once when the page loads. So inside this use effect, we just want to get the liked recipes from our local storage. So first of all, store it inside a variable called stored liked recipes, and we'll pass it, say json.parse, and we'll set the local storage dot get item to the liked recipe. So make sure the name matches, the name you used to set it matches the name you are used to using to get it. Then we'll set the liked recipes, or we just default it to an empty array right here. And lastly, we'll grab the set liked recipes and store the liked recipes right there. So now if we refresh, you can see that the data is still persisted. So if I unlike this one and refresh, you can see that it's working fine. All right, cool. So now the next thing to do is to show the liked recipes. So in order for us to do that, we need to create another state, and I'll call that state show liked and set show liked. I will set this to use states, set this to false by default, so that we can store the liked recipes in the states, and we need to use the states right here to just display all the liked recipes. So this one is fairly simple, not that complicated. So guess let me just bring in this function and put it at the top right here. Then underneath these filtered recipes, we'll just create a new one called displayed recipes. So whenever we have a liked recipe, we want to display the filtered recipes and filter it again down and set the recipe to let's call it liked recipes dot includes the recipe does what dot id, else we want to just show the filtered recipes. Basically, whenever we have whenever we like a recipe, we want to just display those recipes that we liked, else we just want to display the filtered recipes from the search. So we can come to this liked button right here, and we need to toggle between different states. So get rid of this one and say show liked, and we'll set this to all recipes, else we'll set it to the liked recipes, and we'll say on click this would be an arrow function, and set this to a set show liked and negate over the show liked. So with that being said, we need to now grab these displayed recipes and pass it right here, and also replace it with this one. All right, so whenever we like a recipe, we can click on that liked recipe and we'll see it. And if we click on all, we see all the recipes, and we can also search for a specific recipe. So let's see. So if we click over this, you can see then within these liked recipes, we can still like search for a single recipe as well. So let me unlike, oops, that was not intended to happen. Let's try that one more time. So unlike this one, unlike this one, now you can see no recipes found. Go to all recipes. Cool. So I guess the next thing we want to do is to create the details page for each of these recipes. And I think I need to add a margin right here for this one. So say margin right of 4, so we can have some spacing right here. All right, that looks nice. So in order for us to create the details page, we need to go to this pages folder and call this recipe details.gsx. And as you can tell, each of these recipe will be dynamic because the informations are dynamic. Then we need to use the ID to for us to be able to get that. So go back to the app and I will copy this down, and this part now should be recipe / a colon then ID, and I'll pass in the recipe details right here. So with this now, we can now create dynamic routes, and you can see I'm using recipe / column ID because if I go to the recipe, you can see we used the recipe and this ID right here. So you can call this whatever you want, but just make sure you add the column and the name after it. So now next thing to do is to grab the params, so we can actually have access to the ID with the params hooks. So we can just import use params, and let me just pass it right here and say use params. And you can see it says use param returns an object of key value pairs of dynamic params from the current URL that were matched by the routes. So in our case, we are using the ID. So we just need to pass in the ID right here. And if we console.log ID and set this to ID, let's see what we have. And let's just go to our console and let me refresh this. And let me click on something. You can see that we're getting the ID of 1. So it automatically gives us that ID. Cool. So what we want to do right now is to check the recipe, create a recipe variable. I want to find from that recipes, I want to find the recipe that actually matches the recipe that we are clicking on. So we can now use this to, let me change this one for now to the recipe dot, let me use the title so that it will make more sense. Okay, so you can see that we now have classic pancakes. If I try this chicken stir fry, you can see we have it right here. All right, so now that we have that out of the way, what we need to do is to this is not necessarily a section, so we'll just leave it at div and get rid of all these and give this a class of relative. Then I'll go to the home page and not the home, the hero component, and copy this overlay class. Then I'll just change this opacity to 80. Then I'll come down and create another div. It should be a div. Class name should be container. Set this to flex, height maybe 60 VH. Set the flex to column items pre-start. Set the justify to center. And inside it, we'll create another div again. And this one will set the z-index to 40. Add the margin right of auto. Max width, we set it to 700 pixels. Padding top will be 16. Add the text white. And inside it, we'll have an h2 of recipe.title. And for the styling, the font size will be 500, font will be 700. Add a increase the font size on medium screens and up to 800. Then margin bottom will be 1. Set it to capitalize and add a leading of 1.2, and underneath it, this div right here, we bring in the image and set this to recipe image, and the alt will be the title, say recipe title. I set the class name to absolute, left will be 0, add a negative z index of 10, set the height of full, width to full as well, set the object to cover. All right, so let's see what we have. Okay, it looks nice, but we're not seeing the background or the overlay. Okay, I guess it's because of this class. All right, cool. Then we also need to show like image should be here, and the information and the ingredients should be at the right side. So for us to do that, make sure we are outside this div right here. So create another one called container and give this a py of 12. The create another div, set the medium to grid, and on medium scripts and up, we set the grid to 2 columns and set the gap to 8. And inside it, we'll create another div, again the class, and this will be class of margin bottom of 4, and on medium screens and up, we get rid of the margin bottom, set to 0. And for the image, we'll do the same thing that we did right here. So copy this one, paste it here. So we will just set the rounded to MD, as you can see right here. Okay, I think we're having an issue. So what I'm going to do is to cut all this and put it inside another div, paste it like so. That work. Okay, why is that happening? Okay, so we need to grab this one and put it right here. Okay, now it's working fine. Okay, so now we have the image at the left. We need some like a button to tab between ingredients and the information. So underneath this, we'll bring in the another div, then we'll create another one with class of speaks x of 4, and inside that div we'll have 2 buttons. So the first button will be for information, then the other one will be for the ingredients, if I can spell well. Then underneath, we want to show the information or the text for both of them. So basically, I'll just do that now. So we'll create a state and set it to selected, set this to set selected, say use state, and this should be information. If I can spell information well. So basically, we want to toggle between the 2 tabs, and there are different ways to go about it, but I think This is one of the simplest ways. So what we want to do is that we first of all check if the selected is if the selected matches what we need. So for this button now, I can say the class name, and I will use the curly bracket and backticks and say if the selected is equals to information, which is the default one, then we want to do something else. We also want to do something. So what we want to do, so if it's equals to the information, we basically want to go to the hero again, copy the styles for the button, paste it right here. Else we'll just say rounded, large, and set the border and border neutral, set it to 900 at the px of 4, py 2. Then we'll copy this class name and we'll do the same to the ingredients and set this to ingredients. Ingredient is kind of hard to spell, so if I go back, I see that the default one is information. Then we'll click on ingredients. Nothing is working now because we've not updated the function when we click. So we can just do that by saying on click right here and set the selected to information. I'll copy this one and just grab this ingredients and set it to ingredients. So if I click on this now, we can toggle between the information and the ingredients. So with this now, we can now show different content based on the tab we are currently on. So for the first one, we'll create a div and give this a class of margin top of 4. I will say the selected if is equals to information, then we'll just use a logical operator and create a p tag. It should be p tag, set it to the recipe dot information, which will show us the information. Then for the other one, we can just say if selected is ingredients, then if I go to the data.js file, the ingredients is inside an array. So what we'll do is that we'll just create an unordered list and we'll just map over the ingredients. So say ingredients singular, and also create the li, and let me save this so that we can have access to the index, and we'll use the index as the key, and we'll just pass in the ingredients right here. And for styling, I think we just have a margin button of 2 to add some space underneath, as you can see. So cool. So we can head over to this chocolate one. You can get an information for it is and the ingredients on how to prepare that meal. All right, so the next section we'll be creating next is the testimonial section. So we'll head back to our code and we'll put that inside the sections right here and we'll call it testimonial .gsx and bring out the code snippets. And remember, we have all the data we need in this data.js file. So we have the testimonial data right here. So the first thing is to import it. So we can say import testimonial data. And since this is a section, we'll call this section. And inside this section, we'll bring in the container class. And inside the container class, we'll bring in an h2 that says, let me copy the text from here. And we'll paste it here and we'll give it some style. So for the class name, we'll say the text should be, or the font size should be 400. Medium devices and up, we'll set it to 600. Then we'll add a font width of 600, MB of 4, and center the text. So text should be center. Then we'll also have another div that we hold the entire testimonial data. So this div right here, the class is a very long one. So what I will do is that I will just display the testimonial data first. I feel it's going to make more sense. So we'll say testimonial data dot map and map over each of the data, and we'll create a div, and let's give this, let's first of all save this. I can give this a key and set it to data.id, and inside the inside this div, we'll create another div for the rating. So this is what we want to create. So inside this div now, so we're going to use an array constructor, and we'll set it to the length of the rating, which is 5 by default, and let's just fill it with this 0. Then now we'll map over it, and we'll basically just ignore the first value because we don't necessarily need it, because we'll be rendering the star icon. Then let me open this, and we'll bring in the star right here, and this should also have a key of the index. And let's give this a class name. I'll set it to fill. I'll set it to the primary colors. So let's bring in the testimonial section right here. So we'll go to home. Under the recipes, we'll say testimonial section, and bring in the testimonial. Save. All right, so we are seeing all the stars, which is cool. So next we'll head back and we want to display the rest data. So underneath this div, create a p tag and we'll give this a class name and set the font size to 200, font width to 500, add MB of 4, and line height should be 1.6, and we're passing the data dot description. And for the image, we'll create another div, and this should have a class of flex items, set it to center, and a gap set it to 2. I'll hit tab now. Then inside the div, we'll bring in the image. The source will be data.image. Then the alt will be the name, so data.name. And for the styling, we'll set the size to be 40 pixels. For the width and the height, then rounded will be 4. I will set the object to cover. So let's see if the image is showing. Alright, cool. So we're starting from mobile first, so that's why it's looking kind of ugly. So next thing to do is to add the name and the handle, I guess. Let me confirm. Yeah, just to add the name and the handle. So still inside this div, because we have the image right here, so the name and the handle need to be inside one div right here. So you can just pass in an h4. This will be the data.name, and the paragraph will just pass in the data handle. And for the style, we just add the font weight of 500, and for the handle, we'll set the color to be gray of 600. So let's see. All right, cool. So there's still some things that needed to be done. So we can come back to this div right here. Like I said, this class name will be very, very long, so I'll try to explain as I type it out. So first of all, set it to relative, and we'll add a margin bottom of 8, set it rounded to 2xl, and basically what we're doing is we're just creating this right here, this background color right here with this line that you are seeing. Then we'll add the bg of gray, set it to 300, padding of 8 all around. Then the after pseudo class, will set it to absolute. Then again, the after pseudo class, will set the left to be 50%. And again, after pseudo class, will set the top to be 50% as well. The after pseudo class, will set the height to be like 0.5. Then after pseudo class, we set the width to be 95%. Then after pseudo class again, we set the translate to be negative for the x-axis, and this should be 1/2, which is 50%. Then again, the after pseudo class, we'll set a translate y this time. So translate y, I'll set it to 50%. So to center this vertically and to center this horizontally and to center this vertically. After that, we're still on the after pseudo class, we will set the bg to neutral 900, which is the thin black line. This is what we're just tying right now. Then the after class again, set the content to, it should be content to be an empty string. Then on medium devices and up, we'll set the grid, we'll set it to grid. Then we'll set the grid close to 2. Then we'll add a gap of 12. We'll add a padding x of 10, and also add a padding y of 16. Then on medium devices and up, we'll target the after pseudo class. I will set the height to 85%. And again, the after pseudo class will set the width to 0.5, just basically the opposite of what we did. So save this. You can see that the class name is really long, so let's see if it took effect. So you can see that this is coming in nice. So there are just a couple of things we just need to do, like we need to add flex to these stars right here. So for us to do that, we just need to grab this class name right here and say it should be flex. I'll still want to add the margin bottom of 4 just to add some space underneath it. But I think the space is not as much as this one. Okay, so there's a lot of space right here. So what I will do is come to this section and add a padding top of like 12 to push it down. Okay, so let's check how it is on mobile. Okay, so on mobile is not looking nice. We need space right here. So what we'll do is under this div, or this div right here, we'll set this to target the last element, so which is this one right here. Then we'll add a margin top. Let me set it to 12, and on medium devices we'll just take it off. So say margin, target the last item and set the margin top to 0. So it added a space right here. So the next section that we'll be building will be the newsletter section. So this can be a component. I think this is something that should be reused all over your site. So I think we'll put it in a component, but we can still use it in the section. So this is when you start thinking critically about how you want your website or your application to function. So we'll go back to our code and put inside the components folder, and I'll call this newsletter.gsx. And since this is a reusable component, let's just see add this as a section. Feel it will work fine as well. And let's just add this padding y of 12 for both the top and the bottom. Then bring in the container class, and for the h2, I think it said subscribe to our newsletter. Subscribe to our newsletter, I guess. Yeah. So we'll add some classes right here and set the text to 400. On medium devices and up, we'll set the text to 600. Then the font will be 600. Then add margin bottom of 4 and center the text as well. So as usual, this won't show right up. All we have to do is to go to our home and pass in the newsletter. All right, showing right here now. So we need the form, because this is more or less like a form to submit. You can just add the input, it's still going to work, but I just want to show you how to achieve the same thing using the form tag, which will automatically submit when you hit the submit button. So underneath the h2, bring in the form tag. We don't need the action. We don't need a class name. I will set to relative, set the mx to auto to center it both left and right. Then we'll add a max width of 500 pixels, and on media devices and all, we'll set it to flex. Then now we'll bring in the input, and for the input also add some styling as well. So set the class name to have a margin bottom of 4, height set it to 45 pixel, set the width to full, add border radius of large, then the border should be 1.5 pixels, and we set the color to be black. Then also set the color of the text to be black. So this one is the color of the border. Then we'll add a padding left of 4, and the placeholder color should be black. So this should be black. Cool. And I think we need to add a placeholder as well. So I can say placeholder and say enter your email. And this should be email. So for the type, we can set this to email. So let's see. So you can see that we're having this autocomplete because we set it to an email. All right, so we need to create the button. So underneath the input tag, we bring in the button, and the type of this button should be submit. Then the button itself said, what did it say? Subscribe. So say subscribe. For the class name, we'll set the font width to 500. The width should be full. Add a rounded of large. The primary should be, or the background should have the primary 400. We'll add a padding to the left and right of 4. Padding to the top and bottom, set it to 3. Text will be white. On medium devices and up, set it to absolute. On medium devices and up, set the right to 0. On medium devices and up again, we'll set the top to 0. On medium devices and up, we'll set the height to let's say 45 pixels. Then medium devices and up, we'll set the width to fit the button. Then on medium devices and up, we'll set the rounded to be bottom left, and we'll take it off because right now the bottom, the border radius is added to all the sides. So we'll remove it for bottom left, and also remove it from the top left as well. So you can see that the button gets added right here. So now that we have this, basically 2 things or 3 things that we want to do is to first of all store the email that the user enters in a state, and we want to show a message when the user hits on the subscribe button, and we want that message to go away after a certain period of time. So the first thing is to keep track of what the user enters. So again, we'll just create a state right here. We'll call this email and set email. Set it to use state and be an empty string. Then right here we set the value to that email, and when we change the value, target the event, and we'll grab the set email function and just basically target the value that's been stored right here, that has been entered by the user, which is basically the email. All right, cool. So the next thing we want to do is to show a message. So basically we'll have a state right here when we submit, but we'll just leave this for now. We'll create that in a bit. So for this one, basically the same thing, but this will be message and this will be set message. And let's just even do that right now. So we say on submit. So when the users hits on submit, we want to call this function. So call this one handle subscribe, and let's just create the function, say handle subscribe. Okay, so we can just console the log something, say submitted, and by default it should submit whenever we like click on this subscribe button. So that's how it works by default. So we need to prevent that behavior so that it does not submit like that. So how do we do that? We just need to pass in an event right here, and we say event or prevent default right now. So when we click on this, you can see that it's not refreshing again. So stop that behavior. Now we'll just basically check. So we say if there's an email, we'll set the message to something like thank you for, it should be thank you for subscribing. Then we basically want to clear the email when we are done. Else we will set the message to something else and say please enter a valid email address. All right, so we have this thank you for subscribing stored right now, but we want to display it with the message right here. So where should we do that? We'll go underneath the form. I think it's better here. Then we'll say if there's a message, use logical operator and pass in a p tag, and we'll just pass in the message right here. Let's just put it in the center, so text center. All right, so when we submit now, let me add an email. If I hit subscribe, you can see that the field or the input has reset to the initial placeholder value. Then we'll have this thank you for subscribing, but we want this to go away after a certain period of time. So in order for us to do that, we'll use the use effect hook, so that we'll listen for side effect. And what we want to listen for is when there is a message. So whenever this message shows, we'll set a timer to clear out the message after a period of time. So underneath this handle subscribe, we'll say use effect, and we'll set this to dependency an empty array for now. Then we'll create a function called timer. I will set this to set timeout. So timeout, and again the syntax is basically like use effect itself, but now we're just passing the duration we want the message to stay. In our case it will be 3 seconds. So after 3 seconds you want to perform an action right here. So what do we want to do? Basically want to clear the message. So after 3 seconds we want to clear the message, and what we have to do right now is to now set a clear timeout to avoid memory leaks, like the way we did earlier with the search functionality. So we say return and clear timeout. I'll set it to this timer right here. So basically stuff like this means whenever after the message has been okay, we need to add an ad. So let me fill this. So thank you for subscribing. So before we add all this now, you can see that this is still there after 3 seconds, but no matter or whatever we continue to like spam this button, this won't cause any issues, because as we are setting the timer right here, we're also clearing it immediately, so it's not going to lead to any memory leaks. I just hope that makes sense. So I guess that's it for the newsletter section. So, and lastly, okay, still showing here because we need to pass in the message. Like I said, use effect run only once, because there's doesn't depend on anything, but we want to make sure this always run when there's an issue, there's a change to the um, state right here. So I keep adding and adding is not going to cause any issues. So we're almost done. The next thing is to just create this footer section right here. So we head back, and under the components, create a footer .jsx, set this to rfce. For the footer, we just change the tag to footer, and we'll bring in a tag called hr for horizontal line, and we'll set the class name to text gray 100, and let's add the text. So I think the text says what does it say? Copyright here. So we'll copy this and we'll paste this right here. So we'll also give a class name and set padding to 8, and we'll also make sure the text is always centered. Then we want this here to be dynamic so that we don't have to manually change it every time we enter a new year. So we can just do that by bringing a new date. This is a method, and we can get different method from it. So in our case, we just want to get the full year. So this is 2024, and I think I'm making a mistake. So since we're almost done, I can just get rid of this one. So we need to display it right here. So we need the footer to show at all times, as well as the header. So we'll go to the app and we'll put it underneath right here and set it to the footer. And if we check now, you can see it's showing right here. And in your case, this will be showing 2025 by the time you're watching this video. So I'm happy you crossed over to the new year, and happy New Year's. So let's check how it is on mobile. Okay, it looks nice. And let's try to save and show the liked recipes, and we can preview each of the recipes. All right guys, so that's the end of the video. If you found it helpful, please do it to hit the like button, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more content like this. And if you have any questions or suggestions on more video ideas, you can leave that in the comment section. Once again, happy new year, and see you next time.